Hi everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. We're here at the Health 2022 conference, and our guest today is Gabriela Pelin. She is the Chief Innovation Officer at Avaneer Health. Welcome, Gabriela.
Thank you, John. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about some really interesting, exchange of data, interoperability topics. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and Avaneer Health.
So I've been in healthcare for the last 5 years, coming from technology background at IBM, and here I am with the company Avaneer Health that was created by payers and providers to transform healthcare for the better of the patients and physicians.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about that. Can you describe how a decentralized peer-to-peer network, right? Blockchain is a decentralized peer-to-peer network, right? That is different than maybe some of the common ways that healthcare is achieving and maybe working towards interoperability today.
So that's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked. And a decentralized peer-to-peer network, it's like a federated model where nobody is there to aggregate someone's data and to try and use someone's data and make money from someone's data. It's more like a community federated model, but it has the business discipline on top of it. So there is an operator, like a company, Avaneer Health, that creates the rules of the network, which is an all-inclusive network. There are private storage and compute environments that each of the network participants get. And they also get all of the tooling in order to transform their data into common data models like FHIR.
Okay.
And as a result, when they communicate with each other, it's a direct communication between them. So that's the peer-to-peer aspect. So you only join the network once. You get your stack of private compute and storage environment and data transformation tooling. You also get the ID that functions on the network, Avaneer ID, which means that you can identify who is this person, who is this patient that you want to communicate about between the payers and providers. And that kind of links it all together. And this is how the communication happens between the payers and the providers in healthcare administration, which is our first use case.
Okay. Yeah, we want to dive into that, but can you help us understand, how does this network kind of fit within things like TEFCA, QHINs, a lot of these other interoperability initiatives?
Would give an example, maybe an analogy of if you decide to build your kitchen, renovate your kitchen when you're in a new house, you can put tile on top of the existing tile. It will cost you less and it will look much better and you will accomplish the job. But you can also decide that maybe if all of those layers of tile that are there are not good anymore and they're just taking your space, and maybe that's not the best way to go and it's not achieving the objectives that you need to achieve. It's the same with technology. There is a lot of technical debt accumulated in healthcare today. This is why it costs us so much money to do healthcare administration. We spend about $1 trillion as a nation. So it's just hard to think that because there's going to be an initiative that is on top of the mess will get better. Maybe there is a way how to reimagine how we break the data silos and how we create technology using all of the newest things that exist today on the technology scene, how we use that so that we can remove layers as opposed to add yet an additional layer of a QHIN network, for example.
Yeah, I think your analogy is really interesting because it may make some improvements, right? Just like if you layer a tile on top of tile, it's better, but then eventually it catches up to you and you're like, we got to just remove it all, right?
Right, and you've got to change other things and, put a smart fridge in and things like that, right? So what I wish would happen with TEFCA as the next stage. Well, first of all, I should say congratulations for getting such a huge project off the ground to the ONC and Sequoia and everybody who was involved in that. The patients needed to be heard, data needs to be provided, so that is all very positive and very good. What we could do together as a next step is to say, all right, we're going to move beyond the old technology that exists today in the market, and we're going to allow for new technologies to emerge so that we can take some of the costs out of the system and make the communication between payers and providers and other companies more effective and more geared towards the experience of the patient and of the physician, which unfortunately, if you just layer things on top, you're not gonna be able to transform that experience. Like, you need to like really change how things are happening so that we as people have a different experience with healthcare.
Yeah, and we need innovation in interoperability. There's no doubt there. How do you approach, we talked about the decentralized peer-to-peer network. How do you ensure trust on something that's implemented, when I hear decentralized and peer-to-peer, I'm like, how do we trust each other to be able to share that way?
That's a good point, because you could have public networks which are completely open in terms of security, like anybody can join and so on. What we decided to do is do a permissioned network. What that means is that you know your endpoint. So kind of like in banking, know your customer, so they have to know a lot about their clients. This network is going to be the same. Like, who is this endpoint? Do we know enough about this company? Are they legit? Do they have all the qualifications in order to be allowed to join the network? And knowing your endpoint means that you can allow them in. And then after that, it depends on the solutions. Like, everybody would have to decide which solution they want to use. So it's not going to be, well, if you join, you can access anything and everything. It's all like permission based, and it's very well structured in terms of privacy and security as to how the participants communicate. Because we want to give them the ability to make those decisions. As I said, we're not a data aggregator. The data belongs to whomever brings the data in, and they have to be able to make the decision. I want to contribute to these solutions, or I don't, and I want to work with this innovator, or I don't. So when we as the operator are going to enable that according to their decisions.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're focused on administrative interoperability and sharing the administrative data. Why is Avaneer Health really focused on that rather than the clinical, which seems to be the dominant topic of conversation with interoperability?
So in my previous job at Watson Health, our desire was to fix the clinical, the outcomes, right? And lessons learned. It is not easy to get through the data silos. It is not easy to train AI models if you don't have the data structured in a certain way. And if you don't have access to the data, like there is nowhere in the US a platform where you could say, I'm going to come in and the data is already there. And if the participants give me access, then I can get the data. There is no such thing. This is the dream for any solution that is based on AI or analytics that want to impact outcomes. Because to impact outcomes, you need longitudinal patient records, you need to do patients like me, you need to do those things, and those things need standardized technology stacks, standardized data models, and they need the ability to access data with permission, of course, and for a necessary use case. But that's what we're building. We're kind of going there, but the longer route, because as we see the point-to-point solutions that are trying to make a difference in the market today, everybody struggles with data. I don't think anybody would contradict me on this.
No, that's for sure.
And that's where we want to contribute to this industry, and that's why we think only as a community we can solve it, like many people being on this network and on the same stack and transforming the data in the same models, then we can solve this big issue with data that we have in healthcare today.
Well, and one of the big issues we have in any interoperability, but I think especially the decentralized, goes back to patient identity. How are you approaching patient identity on your network?
So we have an entire roadmap around identity, because that's one of the topics that it's really hard to solve today. And many companies have solved it by matching, right? So we have partnered with one of them to use the matching capabilities that already achieve like a 99% matching rate. But from there are other things that can be done, like for example, enabling companies whose job is identity. Somebody like clear comes to mind, or work on decentralized identities, which is like the next, I guess,
think that's the
frontier.
dream, right?
That's the dream that everybody has. So we're thinking, how do we make sure that everything that's innovative in the market we can enable as part of our roadmap with identity? We're also collaborating with FAST. FAST is another ONC initiative. They have an identity work stream, and we're collaborating with them as well, because this will have to be, again, a joint effort in the industry. Nobody alone can solve it. But we certainly want to orchestrate how that gets solved and contribute to the solution of that problem.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about solutions. What type of solutions do you see or can launch on the network?
So the first solution we're launching is called coverage. And why aren't we calling it eligibility? Because we've reimagined the process. And so what we are saying is, in order for us to fix healthcare, payers and providers are going to need to bet on each other's future. They're going to need to take some things and make them common. Because if they don't make them common, we're going to end up with the same disruption that we're having today. So what we're trying to do is to say, all right, so now the payers and providers that are on the network, what do you know about John? Well, I know he has this coverage, and I know he has that coverage. And no, I think his coverage expired. No, I have this other record. That's the mess we have today, right? So we're like, okay, bring the mess into one dashboard. And now that we have this one dashboard, let's run the primacy determinacy between the payers. The payers are the source of data. They're responsible for this data, right? So now that all the providers said their piece and the payers said their piece, let's run the primacy determinacy. And once that is done, then we tell the provider, okay, provider, here is what was determined. And now these payers are saying, this is primary, this is secondary. And it's heaven for providers, because they often don't know. That's why they end up billing the wrong way, and then they get rejected and so on. And it's also a big problem for the payers, because then if they paid in the wrong way, they have to go and recover money and so on. So we are saying, all right, common process, everybody say your piece, but at the end we're going to reach one conclusion. And when that conclusion is reached, from there everything is unleashed and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, that's nice. So I think one thing that's interesting about Avaneer Health is you have the network, but you also have a bunch of marketplace partners on the network as well. Talk about the value creation for innovators in digital health, because you have both the network and the partners.
I really love this question, because you're right, we have the distribution, we have the payers and providers there, and a lot of people at this conference have talked about scale. How do they achieve scale and how do they achieve distribution? And what we're saying is you can achieve scale if you're working on standardized data models and on a standardized IT stack. And we're going to offer this package for the innovator. And since we're already building the coverage, that could be a component for so many other solutions that could build on top. We have the identity there, which is needed for almost every solution, right? We have workflow authorization and we have data discovery capabilities. So for an innovator, it doesn't need to build the infrastructure, doesn't need to build a platform, doesn't need to build identity and all of those things, and knows where is the data, what kind of data. Well, that is really useful for anybody who wants to shorten their time to market and reduce their cost from building a solution, so they can focus on the value add, the solution logic itself. And by being on our platform, they also get to talk to the payers and providers like in a Shark Tank kind of format, where they could actually know even before launching how much interest is there in their solution. And I think that's another very valuable contribution to the innovator community there.
Very cool. Well, Gabriela, this was a lot of fun and really interesting to learn more about Avaneer Health. So thanks for sharing, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting application. Thanks, Gabriela.